I am 25 years old and trying to pay down as much debt as possible. I currently have roughly $30,000 in debt from a car loan and credit cards. I have been working 80 to 90 hours a week for close to 2 months now and have made a lot of progress toward paying everything down. The hours are divided between two jobs that are near each other, so I do not have to commute far when going to the next job. The main job, which makes up roughly 75% of my hours, is entirely customer service based. The other job has little to no customer interaction. I am averaging around 6 to 7 hours of sleep per day. I am noticing my mental health significantly declining, and I do not have any interactions with anyone besides at work. I feel like I am in a constant work mindset. For anyone who has worked these hours long term, do you have any tips or advice? Story 1. As someone who has worked 270 to 320 hours monthly over the last 10 years, you do not have to continue this way. It is harming you quickly, like being in the fast lane. Some credit companies allow you to refinance debt as a loan. This might be a better option than risking your health. Story 2. You do not. It is only going to wear on your mental health more and more. It might be worth it to stick to one of the jobs and pay everything off slower. Story 3. It is not sustainable. I tried to work 100 to 120 hours per week during graduate school, literally 14 to 16 hours per day, 7 days a week. I probably took years off my life and had a complete medical collapse after 2 semesters. It is not worth it unless you are literally facing eviction or starvation as the alternative. Story 4. I have worked these hours. The important thing is that you need an exit date when it all ends. You cannot do it forever. If you have done it for a couple of months at most, you have 1 more month where you can continue. Set that date and stick to it. If you do not, I have seen the consequences: physical decline and mental breakdown. You are 25 and likely to recover when you stop, but you are seriously playing with fire. Give yourself 4 more weeks, then you must stop. That is your exit date. On the other hand, when you have been working those long hours, the first weekend will feel like a week off work. You will be amazed at how quickly you refresh. I cannot stress enough that you need to set that exit date. It has to be within 1 month from today, ideally within 4 weeks or even better 2 weeks, but you must have that exit date set. Story 5. So do you think all this is worth it for that Tesla Model 3? Jesus, how did you think you could afford it? When I was 25, I drove an 11-year-old used Honda Accord. Even though I was making decent money, I lived like I was broke. And you are a Wall Street Bets kid too. That explains all the terrible financial choices. Story 6. You are doing this to pay off debt at the expense of everything else. Your determination is what will get you through. You basically go until you are burnt out and then think about work-life balance. Story 7. Okay, here is my advice. You seem stuck on needing to work these hours, so here are the steps. You need to meditate for 15 minutes before work. You need to take a 30-minute walk after work outside, preferably with a friend, family member, or significant other. You have to eat properly. The moment you have everything paid off, quit one job. This lifestyle is unsustainable. Story 8. The answer is you cannot maintain this without something giving, and you have already said your mental health is declining. If you are doing the majority of hours in one job, quit the second job and get some sleep. You will be more productive and less likely to hurt yourself in the meantime. Worst case, go through some kind of debt management plan. No amount of money is worth your health. Story 9. I lasted about 3 months working this schedule. You do not need to wipe out your debts this quickly, especially at the cost of your mental health. If you want to maintain this pace a little longer, take one job's entire vacation. You should get paid for your time off and then the other ones. Give your body a break for a little while. Story 10. I did it in my 20s, working 2 full-time jobs and sometimes over 100 hours per week. You put your head down, concentrate on the end goal, and power through. The only thing I knew how to do was to keep on keeping on. Bob Dylan. Story 11. I did this for 4 years. Sleep is incredibly important, but you will experience a mental health impact no matter what, and the physical exhaustion really catches up to you. If I were you, I would use paid time off every month if you have quite a bit available. Even 1 day off makes a huge difference, and it could just be a day full of sleep and relaxation. I remember not spending a lot of money during those times because I was just too tired. Story 12. With a commute under 5 minutes, I suggest selling your car to reduce debt and getting an older, inexpensive model, or even better, using public transportation. Then focus on one job, the one that offers overtime, and try to work a maximum of 60 hours instead. Story 13. I tried this once when I was saving up for a wedding. My wife got pregnant unexpectedly, and the smell of cooking meat would make her violently sick. She worked in a kitchen, so that was pretty much career-ending for her. I kept it up for about 5 months but had to quit the second job because I was so constantly exhausted and irritable that if I tried to keep it up, there wouldn't have been a wedding to save up for. I want to be clear, this wasn't my wife being unreasonable. I was absolutely becoming difficult. I remember doing a pizza delivery at 11:15 p.m., and my wife sent a text asking me to do something. For the life of me, I can't remember what the text asked me to do, but I remember flipping out and planning in my head how much I was going to be upset with her for her audacity, when I suddenly realized that I was going to be ranting and raving over some 5-minute task. That's when I figured it was time to quit the second job and just deal with a cheap wedding. Story 14. You absolutely should not attempt to maintain that. You are already seeing the effects of it after only a couple of months. That is not going to magically plateau or get better. If you really need the cash, I highly recommend capping yourself at one job, since you said one makes up 75% of the hours. Just do that one so you can at least rest a little each day. My best wishes to you and good luck. Hats off to you for working so hard to pay off your debt. Debt is a very slippery slope. Story 15. Your mental health is worth much more than $30,000 in debt. Create a plan that allows you to manage with one job. Story 16. It is very bad for your mental health. My mental health declines every spring and summer, from May to August. I average around 300 hours a month. Work was taking all my energy. I would go home and just be a self-entitled person, not wanting to do things with my kids. Life is way more than money. I recently quit one of my jobs. Paid well, but I feel like I am living again and not just existing. Story 17. It is a short-term fix, not a long-term solution. Do it until the negatives outweigh the positives. Then stop. Story 18. As someone in an industry where these kinds of work weeks happen, it is going to be miserable no matter what. I have seen people nearly get into physical altercations over petty issues simply because they were tired and stressed. My advice is to eat as healthily as you can. Do not turn to chips and fast food when you do not have to. Prioritize high-protein, filling meals with vegetables and fruits. Drink plenty of water. This will help keep your body fueled. Story 19. It is very bad for you. My mental health declines every spring and summer. From May to August, I average around 300 hours a month. Work was taking all my energy. I would go home and just be self-entitled, not wanting to do things with my kids, etc. Life is much more than money. I recently quit one of my jobs. Paid well, but I feel like I am living again and not just existing. Story 20. You can slow down the pace as long as the debt does not grow again. Debt is a hole easy to fall into but hard and time-intensive to get out of. As you are noticing, you can spend money much faster than you can earn it, even when you are working as much as you do. This is the big lesson here. When you get rid of your debt, do not delude yourself into taking on new debt for depreciating assets just because something tells you, I can get rid of it again, especially now that I earn a bit more. You would not be the first person to become debt-free, then start to earn more and fall into an even deeper hole afterward. So be mindful of that. Anyhow, your health is at least as important as this debt. If you are not in a condition to work, you cannot earn money to pay it down further. So do not overdo it. Story 21. I did this for a couple of months in my 20s. I was literally falling asleep at traffic lights. I got through it knowing it was temporary and for a specific goal. Set a time limit and a cash goal. Seeing a defined end and goal helps. Make the end sooner rather than later, even if you still have some debt. The things you do in your 20s come back to you in your 40s. You can consider this a lesson about the pitfalls of living outside your means. Story 22. Do not get yourself into debt. Do not use credit cards. Keep doing what you are doing until you are out of this difficult situation. Then slow down a little and do not put yourself back in this position. I have been where you are. Story 23. I once did a similar thing, working 16-hour days, 6 days a week, and I could only manage it for about 3 months. If you are going to do this, and I will not tell you what to do because you are an adult and have decided your course of action, set a definite endpoint. By this, I mean I made it okay for 3 months, but if it was indefinite, I would have lost it. Story 24. It does not get any better. I have been doing it for almost a year straight now. I work 21 days, then have 10 days off, averaging 4 to 6 hours of sleep a night. Story 25. I sometimes have those kinds of weeks. You don't maintain that on a regular basis. That is the fastest way to burn out. Story 26. You do not. It is literally harmful in the long term, and 2 months of it means you are approaching the long-term effects. Story 27. I wouldn't bother doing 2 40-hour jobs. It's not worth it. I was working 55 to 65 hours at one job. 65 hours at one job is almost equal to 2 40-hour jobs, which equals 77.5 hours of straight pay. It's a lot easier and more manageable. Story 28. I have had intense work weeks when starting a business, and recently I have also had weeks where I work 10 hours daily. My honest recommendation is do not do this. It is mostly due to mental health. Being in constant work mode without rest strains your mental health. Many do not acknowledge that mental health is not like a physical wound that heals in a month. It takes months to recover. When you drag your mental health down, you will have a very hard time recovering, and in worst cases, you will need professional help. You want to pay down as much debt as possible, which is understandable, but working 90-hour weeks will make you unable to appreciate your accomplishments because you will be mentally drained. Keep your main job, and instead of taking a second job, look for occasional side gigs. Repayment will be slower, but your mental health will not degrade as much. You can also approach it differently. You mentioned a car loan and credit cards. Ask yourself if you need the car now, or if you would be better off driving an inexpensive vehicle for a year or two until you sort out your finances. Sell the car, pay off the credit cards, and then consider a car loan you can afford. Story 29. You cannot do this for very long. I would look into finding a way to finance your debt with lower interest rather than exhausting yourself with work. Sharing accommodations is the easiest way to save a significant amount of money. It is a big sacrifice in comfort, but compared to 80 hours per week, it does not look as bad. Story 30. That's the neat thing. You won't have to pay off if you do not take money. Take a lesson, pay off as much as you can, but try to save your sanity. And try to stay away from debt in the future. I'm in the same situation but trying to work 40 hours weekly and change jobs every 2 years for raises. It works so far, but there are still some things that need to be paid off. Story 31. Have you tried calling your credit cards and asking if they can help you? You may have to close the account, but they are willing to assist as long as you are willing to pay. I called and they reduced my payment amount and also lowered my interest rate to 1% until it is fully paid off. Story 32. I use Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer to help me imagine that I am at an all-inclusive beach resort vacation whenever I am at work. I do not feel like I am at work anymore. Story 33. Try over-the-road trucking. I work long hours as hard as I want to. I was out of debt in a couple of months and have been saving money ever since. If you have no home, spouse, or children, it will be much easier, but you will give up a large part of what you might consider a normal life in exchange for the earnings. Feel free to ask any questions you may have. Story 34. I did this for most of my 20s. Rarely seeing my friends and family was the hardest. One of my jobs was as a bartender, so there was some social interaction. I probably would have gone nuts if both had been office jobs. This time set me up for the rest of my life, so I am happy I did it, but I do not miss the grueling hours. Story 35. I'm noticing my mental health significantly declining. Only rest will stop that. Try working 40 hours a week for 2 months, regain some of your health, and see if you can work smarter instead of harder. For instance, investing some of your time in training might help you get a better job that pays more. Getting rid of debt is a good goal, but if you exhaust yourself mentally in doing so, there won't be you to enjoy being debt-free. Story 36. I know someone who is an accountant. Generally, they work similar hours during the busy season, but it would not be sustainable long-term. If you think you can do this long-term with no negative consequences, then you are wrong. You either live with the trade-off of paying off the debt faster at the expense of deteriorating mental health, or choose to cut down the hours and pay it off over a longer term while maintaining good mental health. Story 37. Step 1. Counselor. Step 2. Write a schedule, outline what you need, and ask your counselor for support. There is no point in reading Reddit comments all day if you have not accomplished anything. Story 38. Long-term. You don't. To quote a popular internet video from my youth, Carl, that kills people. Short-term. You have a goal, stick to it. I personally don't think that your goal is a particularly good reason to ruin your health and that you'd be better off paying off your debt more slowly, but I understand why people do it. My girlfriend, now wife, did it while waiting for me to get out of the Marine Corps. There was nothing else to do, so she paid off her student loans and credit cards. Story 39. You prioritize. Your time outside of work needs to be incredibly structured. You need to do the basics that take care of your physical needs. You cannot have good mental health if you are not sleeping, eating, and staying hydrated. There also needs to be time for you to decompress. I recommend something you can do on your own that is not stressful, such as avoiding video games or activities that involve coordinating with others. You need a goal you are working to achieve, and it is helpful to have some visualization of your progress. You can do this. Do not listen to people who have never had to do it and think others cannot either. Burnout can happen, but keeping things disciplined helps a lot. If you need to pay off debt, then your end goal is already in sight. Story 40. Hey, a lot of people are giving you bad advice on this thread. Let me help you out. First, this is ultimately unsustainable. The longest I've ever worked 80 hours a week was roughly 3 months straight, and I've only done it twice in my life. Make sure you get some physical exercise in the mornings right when you wake up. Take a walk, jog, go to the gym, or surf. Get your heart pumping and wake up for the day. Usually, I would smoke 2 bowls of cannabis per day, one between the first and second job, and one after I clock out of my second job before I go home. Limit phone or video game time to about an hour after you get home. 1 to 2 games of League of Legends, 2 to 3 matches of Apex Legends, or 3 to 4 matches of Dead by Daylight, whatever you choose. Just limit it to about an hour. Make sure you're asleep by midnight at the latest. Don't sacrifice your sleep. You need that. As for the social aspect, you can make friends when you exercise. The gym or surfing is the best time to do it. Just talk to random people. You can also make friends at work. You can do it. I know it's tough. The most important thing is to stick the landing. You know how people diet for a few months and lose weight, then go back to old eating habits and gain it all back? Don't crash out when you stop working 80 hours and buy another Tesla or spend hundreds on a hobby. Your goal is to get back on a budget and be debt-free as soon as possible. Story 41. I worked 70 hours a week for a few years. I would go home to take a shower and sleep. I was fortunate to work at a restaurant, so I had a social outlet and was fed there every day. I did not have to worry about dishes or cooking at home. It burned me out, though. It is something you cannot do forever. Story 42. When I was 26, I worked an 8-hour physical job, drove home, showered, ate, and went to school for another 5 hours. I did that for a year and felt like the Walking Dead. Later, I got a job where things were more normal, working over 50 hours weekly for a while. You need an exit strategy. Story 43. I can't imagine doing that long term. I did it for a summer about 11 years ago. It was tough, but the money was worth it. I was sad when it ended, but it probably saved me from burnout. I remember the petty arguments on the job site and the rivalries that developed. I remember buying new clothes on my days off because it seemed easier than washing the ones I had. To this day, I have hundreds of socks and a month's worth of underwear from that summer I spent working 14-hour days and 6-day weeks. Story 44. Also watch your taxes. I am not sure how it works where you live, but when I was working 2 jobs, I had to pay quite a bit at the end of the year. Both jobs were taking the proper taxes for each, but the combined income placed me in a much higher tax bracket. Story 45. I did that for about 4 years. I got depressed, developed bad habits, and did many impulsive things I regret because I didn't care about myself anymore. Now, I chill working around 30 hours from home, often doing irresponsible things like smoking weed during work hours, making more than 3 times what I did back then. The 4 years of work boosted my salary significantly. However, not only was it very painful and probably unhealthy, most of my coworkers did not make it. Some burned out and became NEETs, not in education, employment, or training, and others had smaller salary increases. There was only one high-paying role available at the end of the first couple of years, and about 10 of us were working hard. I eventually got that role while the others did not. So, suffering is not a guarantee that you will succeed. Also, losing 4 years in my 20s was rough. In my late 20s, I got out of that phase and tried to return to a functional social life, reconnecting with friends and acquaintances, dating, and so on. In that time, I lost contact with basically everyone as people moved, died, or just changed. The initial methods I found success with for coping with burnout and long hours were drugs and alcohol, under the justification that they made free time relaxing enough to recover. When I didn't use them, I would get back to work feeling like I hadn't rested, stress would build up, and I would approach burnout. While I haven't found therapy helpful since, I found it really helpful at that time because I had spent years relatively isolated, coding all day, and I didn't have the most objective grasp on reality. It was good to have someone to talk to who could call me out when my thoughts became too ridiculous, as I struggled to identify that myself. Story 46. That sounds horrible and it is not sustainable. To tell you the truth, I actually think 40 hours is too much as well, but the world is what it is. Story 47. Have you calculated how long you will need to work like this to pay it off? Having a finish line can be motivational if an end date or dollar amount is something to aim for. Story 48. One thing that helps is learning to cook meals inexpensively. Paying $10 per meal adds up fast when you can make something for $2 to $4, or even less if you become very skilled. Buying potatoes, beans, and rice in bulk is very affordable, for example. You just need to prepare something palatable with them yourself. Learning how to add a small amount of chicken and vegetables to mostly rice and beans, with a little sauce, to make a dish that tastes good and is nutritious is a valuable life skill. If you make 2 to 3 days' worth and can store it, it does not take much time. This will not solve your situation, but it may help you pay down your debts more quickly. Story 49. Life has hard seasons. That said, they are seasons, not ways of living your life. You do not maintain that schedule, you survive it. Keep pushing through maybe another few weeks to work down some more of that debt. But for your long-term benefit, drop one of the jobs and use money wisely to pay off the debt a little slower. Your current situation should be a short-term arrangement. Story 50. Nothing you can do but grit your teeth and keep at it. That is the point anyway. If you can, try to grab another hour of sleep though. Story 51. 3 years into it, working roughly 80 hours per week. I take at least one mini vacation of 3 to 4 days every 2 months. After that mini vacation, I have a bit of a reset. Sometimes I just have 1 to 2 days of doing nothing instead of a vacation. Story 52. All these people telling you to give up on hard work, refinance your debt, and stop slaving for the employer are exactly the same people who complain that the American dream is dead and need the taxpayer to pay off their student loans. You made some bad financial decisions, and now you need to climb out of it. My advice is to pay the minimum payment on all your debt except the smallest one, ignoring interest rates, and then attack the smallest debt like a starving man on a Christmas ham. When that one is paid off, there is one less minimum payment to make, and you can roll that payment into the next smallest one. Repeat this process until your debt is paid. As for your mental health, you need to budget your time as much as your money. Set aside just 15 minutes when you wake up to do some quick exercise, such as push-ups, sit-ups, or stretching. Stay well hydrated during the day. Find creative ways to eat as healthy as you can on a budget. Most importantly, find a few hours one day a week that is 100% truly me time. Turn off the phone, turn off the screens, and get some sunshine. Go for a walk in the park, do some fishing, fly a kite, or do something that gets you outside and breathing fresh air. It's good for you. Finally, once the debt is paid, remember the lesson learned. The debtor is enslaved to the lender. Cut back on the hours if necessary, but maintain your frugal lifestyle. Keep pushing to improve yourself. Make yourself valuable to employers, and fight for every promotion available. If you do all these things, you will be retiring a millionaire at 55. Story 53. Consider taking a 6-month break from your second job. People burn out. Working 2 jobs is tough. Try to get some exercise in the meantime once you are a little rested. You are going to need that cardiovascular exercise in the future. My 2 cents. Story 54. I know it is disappointing to hear because the money is good, but ultimately it is a bad trade-off. Slow down a bit and pay it off more slowly. At least that was my experience over the course of 4 to 5 months of working like that. Story 55. A long time ago, I worked a corporate job more than 50 hours a week while building a business during the evenings and weekends. I worked between 80 and 100 hours a week. No vacations, no days off, no holidays, no sick days, no mental health days. I did this for years. I slept between 4 and 5 hours a night. I still do. I have never needed the 8 hours a night recommended by most. It was definitely a grind. My social life suffered. My relationships with family members suffered. My health suffered due to stress. Having said that, getting out of debt is important. If there is light at the end of your tunnel, putting in long hours for a few more months to pay off your debt might be a good decision. I have 0 debt. No consumer debt. My house is paid for. My cars are paid for. It makes life so much easier. Story 56. You cannot. Humans are not built for that, and it will affect you negatively. Sometimes it will also reduce the number of hours you can actually work over a year. For example, if you work 60 hours a week for 52 weeks, that equals 3,120 hours. However, if you push to work 90 hours a week but burn out after 30 weeks, that equals 2,700 hours. The only way this is doable is to have a clear target in mind. It sounds like you do regarding clearing your debt, and you must know how long it will take at 90 hours per week. However, you need to be very accepting of whether that is, in fact, possible. Just because you want to do it does not mean it is achievable. I would calculate how long it will take at 90 hours per week to clear the debt. If that is more than 6 months, I would seriously consider working 60 hours per week and taking longer to repay the loans. There is no point clearing your debt if, in the meantime, you are destroying your health, mental well-being, and relationships. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.